Welcome to the Therapy Show. I'm Lisa Mustard, your host and guide on this journey of learning and professional growth. Here, we transform the way you earn continuing education contact hours. Whether you're on a walk, on a break in between sessions, commuting, or even preparing dinner, you can engage with cutting-edge insights from leading subject matter experts. Each episode features conversations with seasoned professionals who share effective techniques and tools tailored for busy therapists like you. Our goal is to enrich your practice and fit seamlessly into your active life, ensuring you stay informed and inspired without the hassle of traditional methods. You can say goodbye to sitting in front of a computer screen watching hours and hours of recorded trainings. Instead, we make continuing education as easy and accessible as your favorite podcast. So make sure to visit the website, lisamustard.com, to sign up for our continuing education membership. It's a fantastic way to earn your credits while enjoying the podcast. Join us on the Therapy Show, where your professional development continues wherever you are. Please note that the content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional mental health care, diagnose, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your own licensed mental health provider or medical professional regarding your specific situation. While I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and my guests are also professional counselors, the discussions in this podcast are meant to offer general insights and should not be taken as personalized therapeutic advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapist-client relationship with me or any of my guests. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or have thoughts of harming yourself or others, please contact a mental health professional, call 911, or go to the nearest emergency room immediately. You can also reach out to a crisis hotline such as the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 in the United States for immediate support. Every individual's journey is unique, and what works for one person may not be suitable for another, so please use discretion and seek appropriate care as needed. Well, hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and I'm so excited to welcome my good friend back to the podcast, Jenny Jansen. Welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you back.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm so happy to be back.
Yes, and I have to give, Jenny is a good friend of mine. We meet up for lunch when our schedules work with my crazy volleyball mom life and her busy life as a very, very sought after and booked out therapist. I am just in awe of you as a therapist. You're so skilled. I tell everybody all the time, I highly recommend Jenny all the time. And then just your story is just really cool to me. So would you share with our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got here, how you got to where you are today? Because I think it's really cool.
Hey, yeah, I feel sometimes I look back at my life and, I feel like I've lived 16 different lifetimes in, my short, less than 40 years of living. It's crazy. But so I started out my career after undergrad as an elementary school teacher, believe it or not. And so I say like that was my first life. And so I did that for 4 years and I taught fifth grade. I was always told, when I was younger, that I'm so good with people. Like all my friends would like come to me for advice and I was always like helping people with their problems and stuff like that. And so, but I also like babysitting and I love to be around kids. So it's like, oh, you should be a teacher. And I did that for 4 years. I loved it. I worked at an elementary school up in Greenville, South Carolina. And I did that for 4 years. And I kind of had this nudge. Like my favorite part of teaching was when my kids would come to me and say, oh, I really want to talk to you at lunch, or can we go for a walk at recess? And so that's when I kind of started to really hone into the idea that I really wanted to get to know them as humans and like their lived experience and who they were here to become, and the environmental influences that they have, their family lives, their friends, like who was their boyfriend of the week, and stuff like that. But those were the times that I felt most alive when I was teaching. And so I had kind of this, I lovingly call it my quarter life crisis. At 26, I quit teaching and realized like I don't know what I want to do necessarily, but I know that I don't want to keep teaching. And, I was spending a lot of my energy on teaching these students about things that they didn't really care about and they probably weren't going to use. And so I felt like when I was most impactful was when I was teaching them life skills, when I was teaching them about emotions, when I was teaching them how to communicate with their friends. And so, fast forward through my 2-year quarter life crisis, I decided to go back to grad school and I got my master's in social work. And so I became a clinical social worker. and worked for the Department of Mental Health in their DBT program. I got certified as a DBT therapist and dialectical behavior therapy. So I worked in a group setting and I worked with individuals and I did, after hours coaching and, different things to enhance people's skills, especially those that were, highly suicidal and very dysregulated. And on my journey, I've always been a lifelong learner, I feel. I've been in therapy myself since high school. And so I've, just really enjoy learning about myself and about the world and about how people interact and, emotions and what do they mean and what is this feeling in my body and why do I feel hot when I'm angry and things like that. Like I was always just a very curious person and always looking for self growth. And so I, listened to podcasts and I would take courses. And so I came across, I was probably maybe 3 years into my career as a therapist when I learned about the Adult Chair podcast. And so it was all about learning about the parts of who you are and how your experiences in life shape who you become, your defense mechanisms, your emotions, and your core needs. So when I learned about the Adult Chair, it started out as a podcast. And so the month that I learned about it, she was offering a free month in her membership. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll do a free month and then I'll cancel it. And that didn't happen. And so I stayed with the membership. And, the more I got to know the creator of the Adult Chair, Michelle, she was like, Jenny, you're basically already doing this with your therapy clients. And so she had, created a coaching certification. And so I did the live workshop, got so much out of her live event. And then I became a certified adult chair life coach with this model because I was already doing it with my clients and seeing such incredible benefit. And so once I became certified as an adult chair coach, I left my job at Department of Mental Health and started my private practice. And so I'd have kind of a hybrid of, do some therapy and some life coaching. And, sometimes there's a little bit of a blend and overlap, and sometimes it is very specific depending on who's coming to me and for what reasons.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by the news? Are you struggling with political stress? Because you're not alone. As a therapist, I've had so many clients come to me feeling anxious, drained, and even hopeless about political changes and stress. And I wanted to give them more than just a conversation. I wanted to provide real tools to help them cope. And so that's why I created a workbook for navigating political stress. It's packed with practical exercises, journal prompts, and strategies to set boundaries, reduce anxiety, and focus on what you can control. And for you, my fellow therapists and coaches, this is an editable ebook, so you can customize it to fit your practice, add your branding, and adjust the content to meet your clients' needs. If your clients are struggling with political stress, this workbook can help. So go ahead and check the link in the show notes to learn more about this workbook and see if it is a fit for you and your clients.
So that's kind of a long story short about my journey. But I feel like a lot of it just comes from taking my lived experiences and not pigeonholing myself into this is what I said I was going to do. And so this is what I'm going to do. Like I'm always evolving and learning and then taking that next nudge and taking that next step. And I think part of it is just taking the risk, and saying like, let me just try this on for size and see if it works. And if not, then I have a fallback plan. And even during my quarter life crisis, I was like, okay, am I going to go back to teaching or am I going to go to grad school? And it was like, I just kind of took the leap. And then when I learned about the adult chair, I was like, do I stay at, Department of Mental Health or do I get a life coaching certification? Like, well, I took the leap and then did that. And then I became a master coach and now I do consulting work for her and mentoring. And so it just, everything just kind of starts to evolve the more you open yourself up to what life is actually presenting you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that's how my career has kind of evolved is just taking those next steps and trusting the nudges.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice is just staying open to possibilities and ideas and opportunities. I know that's something that I say a lot because some people will ask me, what is the podcast brought to me besides, of course, doing the continuing education, selling those pod
Mhm.
courses or other CEs. I'm like, it just has opened me up to so many new ideas and opportunities. I get I get emails now for things that, "Oh, well, I never thought about doing that.
Yeah.
That's so interesting." And I think about taking the risk of starting this podcast, and I didn't know what it was gonna do, but it just seemed like the next right thing for me to do. So I think that's so much of doing it's like doing the next right thing for yourself or for what feels, in alignment, and I know alignment is a
Mhm.
really big word for you, and it is for me as well, because I always say I don't do anything unless it aligns with my values, and those are super important to me, and they drive my decision making. So I wanted to ask you about starting your private practice because I know a lot of our listeners they might be working for a state agency, they might be working for a group practice, and they have this dream of starting their own thing because you are 100% virtual, right? Like you don't
Mhm.
yeah, okay. So can you take us back to starting and maybe the leap of faith that you took
Ooh.
with leaving DMH? Because DMH is the state agency here in South Carolina that is the,
Mhm.
mental health, obviously the Department of Mental Health. So can you take us back to that?
It was in 20 when did I leave? I graduated from grad school in 2016,
Okay.
and then I left DMH in 2021.
Okay. So
So it's
really,
really only
yeah.
been, yeah, it's only been, 3.5, 4 years.
Mhm.
And so when I became an adult share certified coach, part of her program, it's a 6-month program where you learn mostly, obviously, how to do coaching and do practicum hours and master classes and a lot of learning and a lot of practicing. But part of that program is also building your business.
Mm.
And so I never, even when I joined the certification, I never thought of myself as being a business owner. I thought it was just going to be kind of an additional tool that I could weave into my therapy practice. And the more I got into the coaching certification, I was like, oh crap, I'm doing this. Like
Yeah.
this is this is happening. So it's almost like I hate to say that the ball was almost set in motion for me, but it's like everything I never knew I always wanted.
Mhm.
And so to me, that just speaks to trusting those universal nudges. And if I'd have seen, 10 steps ahead of where I was going, I probably would have gotten scared
Mhm.
and not taken that leap of faith. So I think it's like, again, starting with those little nudges and just trusting and then trusting the next step and trusting the next step. And so a big part of it was trusting in Michelle and trusting in her certification and trusting in the business mentoring that I was getting. And so when I graduated with my certification, I had a website, I had a scheduling platform, I had a financial platform. I mean, I had everything that I needed. And so it didn't make sense for me to not utilize what I had, I mean, theoretically paid for within the certification. But I think there are many people that didn't do that. I could have easily just said, okay, I'm not going to take advantage of that part of the program. But I think again, expanding into what has been gifted to me and what the universe presented to me and what the program presented to me, I was like, let me just do it. And so when I started out, I had, some of my practical clients had decided to, book on with me. And so I maybe started out my first week with like 4. And it was like, I was like freaking out. I'm used to working 40 plus hours in an agency. I'm like, what am I doing with all my time?
Yeah.
And but I just kept putting one foot in front of the other and kept talking about it and kept, just expanding and opening up. I think I spent a lot of time in meditation and I spent a lot of time in my own personal contemplation and learning and getting mentoring. And I think part of it was not even about taking the leap of faith for myself, but it was taking the leap of faith and thinking about all of the people that I wanted to help and say, if I don't do this, I'm not living in soul alignment because my soul alignment, since, I was talking about in high school, I've always been that kind of person that helps people. And so the way I see it is like, if I didn't do this, I would be doing a disservice to my soul. I would be doing a disservice to my values. And for me to live a soul aligned life meant stepping into this role that was just kind of presented to me.
Mhm.
And I think, many of us, I was just on a call, actually, we were talking about how, our ego gets so scared or like our human, experience where like we get so scared to take these leaps of faith. But when we keep getting presented over and over with the same lesson, it's almost like, you know, coming back around to the same, oh, here's that lesson again. Here's
Mhm.
that lesson. Am I going to listen? Am I going to listen? Am I going to listen? And I think it kind of started with my, my quarter life crisis, for example, because that was when I was really stripped down to, you know, bare nothing. I was like, I really have no idea where my life is going. And if I don't make a change now, I'm going to either, I'm going to end up 6 feet under, if nothing else. And so it's like, I've got to either sink or swim here. And so I chose to swim. And part of that was trusting in, people that were supporting me at that time in my life. And sometimes it is living for other people until you can choose to live for yourself. And so even in taking this leap, you know, kind of to come full circle with where I was in my personal life, being stripped down and living for the hope that other people had for me before I could develop that for myself. I kind of did that same with my business. I had so many people that were like, Jenny, you can do this. And so I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to happen. Just like, back at 26, I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to survive. I don't know how I'm going to make a living. But, fast forward to creating my business, it was more about like believing in what other people could see of me until I could see it for myself. And then believing in the work that I was doing because I'd experienced it. I've been in therapy for so long. I know the power of therapy. I know the power of coaching and having those people alongside you to walk along those dark parts of your journey. And so for me to have gone through what I went through, back at 26, it's like, okay, that's why I went through that. That's why I experienced that darkness so that I could help other people through their darkness. And so it's almost for me, the business part of it is, yeah, that's like the practicality and, the human, this is what we do to survive. Like us humans on the planet, we have to work and pay bill, those kind of things. But I think from a more spiritual and emotional perspective, it really is doing service to that younger version of me that really went through it
Yeah.
and then paying it forward and using that lesson that I learned and making meaning of where I was in my life and saying, I'm not going to let that go for nothing. I'm not going to that's not like a chapter that I close the door on and say like, oh, that's the old version of me. It's a part of me that I've integrated
Yeah.
and used as a lesson and used as, I hate to say like a metaphor for, my clients. I've used it as quote unquote content, if you will, for helping clients to feel not so alone. Because so many times when people come to therapy or coaching, they're at a point where they're like, I need some help. Like I can't do this on my own. And so I always say I'm not the kind of therapist that's like, oh, hold on, let me go get my workbook on anxiety and give you a worksheet. Like that's not, or let me go pull out my book on depression and tell you these are the steps to take.
Right.
I meet with people, eye to eye, heart to heart, and say, where are you on your journey and how can I meet you where you are so that we can walk you out of hell? We
Yeah.
can get you out of where you are. And I don't think I could do that if I hadn't gone through my own.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so many nuggets in there. And I'm just like, my parallel process is just like ding, ding, ding. It's like going off, it's just all
I
the,
know. I realized like
yeah.
that got deep fast. I did not
Yeah.
expect that, but I know that's how you and I talk.
Right. Like this is what we talk about at lunch
This,
about.
this is our lunch date conversation.
No. We're sitting there eating our lava bowls, the conversation we're having. So this is very common. But yeah, and so my counter is, wow, I had my own dark days, my own quarter life crisis, and it was a very similar yet different life
Mhm.
experiences that you had. And I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking or I'm wondering for those who are listening and who might be listening to the show because they're seeking some type of guidance or they're seeking some type of help, like to hear your story and to know where you are today, it's just so affirming that when we are doing this work, when we do the hard work of therapy, when we are open to learning about ourselves, when we're able to have awareness and self-reflection and we are with somebody that we are we trust, we can be vulnerable with and it's a good safe relationship, good safe space. Like the possibilities are endless for you to come out on the other side with a whole amazing life for you to look forward to instead of feeling that you're so down and you're so low. And I know where life has ups and downs, of course.
Mhm.
Things are going to happen that are outside of our control and how we react and respond to those things, I think and believe is a reflection of the work that we have done or that we are doing in therapy if you're in therapy or if you've done therapy and you can remember those life lessons like you said those life lessons they show up Did you learn from it? Yes. Well, you're resilient. You're going to move through it. You're going to find your strengths. It might suck and it might hurt in the moment, but you will come out on the other side because you have those tools and those resources. So I just like to point that out because I think so much information and content out there about mental health is just like, you've got a label, you have to live your label, or you are your label, these influencers out there, and you don't hear this. You can move through this. You can, you know, become who you want to be. It's never too late to change and to grow. A label you don't have to subscribe to that label. It's just maybe a piece of who you are, but it's not who you are. So I don't know. I just have all these different thoughts that are
No,
kind of
I
going
love
through in
it.
my head.
And what I'm hearing, like, as you're saying this, I'm literally envisioning almost like a stage. And, there's going to be certain acts on within a play, for example, where, for example, when with my quarter life crisis, my really dark, depressed, self-destructive part was like front and center. She was the star of that act in that scene.
Mhm.
And as I moved through, it's almost like, okay, she took kind of a back seat and she's like, okay, my scene's over. Now what character is going to be next? And so then it was more of the, you know, resilient, empowered person. But it's like, as it wasn't like this stark difference, it was this growing process.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it is about, understanding, yeah, we're going to have these experiences. And it doesn't mean that those dark days still don't come for me. I mean, it's that part of me is still backstage. And every now and again, she tries to whisper and she tries like, yeah, like, nope, you've got to stay
Yeah.
backstage. Like your scene is over
Yeah.
because I have a new part that's up on stage now. And this is where understanding the parts of who we are can be really empowering. Like you were talking about labels, I
Mhm.
was labeled so many times as like, basically treatment resistant or, I was, what was the word? I'm
That's
losing
okay.
it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, treatment
But anyway,
resistant.
yeah, treatment resistant or defiant. I was like,
Uh,
like defiant in, with therapists or like I was,
Really?
yeah.
See, I don't know that part. I don't know that part.
No, that part's
Yeah.
backstage. She's hogtied in the dressing room. So she's done. We're done with her.
Yeah.
She still comes out every now and again when my therapist pushes my buttons and I flip her off a little bit. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you really pushed a button there. And she's
Yeah.
like, yep, I know. That's why I'm doing my job.
Yeah.
And so I do still have those like
Mhm.
punchy parts that get a little defensive. And so, but I recognize them now and they're not the ones running the show, but I can observe them and say, oh, wow, yep, this is my
Mhm.
triggered part that's coming out, or this is the
Yeah.
part of me that feels, really stressed out or really overwhelmed with change or really down in the dumps and hopeless. And so I can meet those parts because I've understood them and I understand where they came from and I can relate with them differently now
Mm.
because I have grounding in the healthy adult that I want to be.
Mhm.
And in, all of these practices that I've developed with, self-discovery and soul alignment and figuring out who I am and what I'm here to do in this lifetime. And so often we forget. I mean, and I have friends that I'll call and they're like, Jenny, remember who you are, remember where you came from, and remember what you're here to do. And I think that that's part of our journeys, like when we're not sure what to do. And you were talking about, like, do I start a business? Do I, if I'm in a quarter life crisis, where am I going to go? And I think we forget that we all are here to love. Like we all want the same thing. We all want to feel belonging. We all want to feel loved. And that comes from that inner child phase of us. If you think about children, they just want to know that they belong, that they matter, and that they're important and that they're safe. And so anytime that I don't feel like I belong, that I'm loved, that I'm safe,
Mhm.
that's my sign to go back to my inner child and say, like, okay, so what's going on here? And then how do I nurture and comfort myself in the ways that she would need to be comforted so that I can realign with the adult that I'm here to be? And sometimes that comes through, deep meditation or connection to God, source, you know,
Mhm.
divine, my higher self, just looking at those universal perspectives. Cause I think we get so bogged down with humanity and the who's right, who's wrong. And what if none of it's right or wrong? I mean, of course we have morals and values and things like that. And what's right for me might not be right for you.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong. It just means that we have differences. And
Yeah.
so I think that when we can stop masking up and saying, okay, well, who do I need to be for Lisa today? Or who do I need to be for so and so today? and we just live as the truest version of ourselves, then our path becomes more clear.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how, like, coming full circle to like my business or my pulling myself out of my quarter life crisis. I had to do what was right for me. And yes, I had support and guidance along the way, but they just helped to reflect the truth and help me remember,
Mm.
my heart and my soul, and help me to uncover those parts. And so that's what I try to do with my clients too, is to help them remember, those deep parts of themselves that they're here to be.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I know you're doing some incredible work. Could you go over maybe a little bit about the different chairs in the adult chair?
Yeah.
Because I know there's 3, and maybe I think that would be something that would be
Oh, for
of
sure.
interest. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the adult chair model was developed by a woman named Michelle Chalfant, and she kind of breaks down, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge of multiple
Mhm.
modalities. I mean, we, it's like, it's similar to internal family systems, but believe it or not, she's like, that's the one thing that I was never trained in, was internal
Yeah.
family systems. So she just kind of like created this model,
Yeah.
and it's got a little mixture of like gestalt therapy with chairs and things like that. So the child chair, let me start here.
Mm.
So she breaks up your lifespan into 3 distinct chairs. So there's the child chair, the adolescent chair, and the adult chair. So the child chair is ages 0 to 6. And that is when we are the most vulnerable. We're the most playful. We're the most curious. If you think about a baby, like they open their eyes and they're just so wide eyed and they're taking everything in, right? They also are the most authentic. If they are full, they're going to spit out their food. If they are hungry, they're going to cry. If they are sad, they're going to cry. If they're wet, they're going to cry. Like, they have ways of communicating that they don't really look to the world around them. They're very in tune and just express who they are. Right. And the thing, though, about this child chair, where our core needs and our core emotions live, it's also where we have the least amount of discernment. And so we don't really know what's right and wrong. We take everything in as truth. So this is where a lot of our subconscious programmings are created. If you're told that you're a bad girl or a bad boy, or if you're told that, oh, wow, you're so smart. Okay, that's who I am. Let me drop that belief into my subconscious. Or if you cry and then you're shunned, it's like, oh, I can't express my emotions. Let me drop that into the subconscious. So we take everything in without discernment. And so this is where we kind of develop the beliefs about who we are. So fast forward to around the age of 7, this is the beginning of the adolescent chair. So it's pre-adolescence, adolescence, and post-adolescence. It goes to age 24. And this is where our ego defenses come online. This is when our brain develops and starts to realize, like, oh, I'm separate, or I'm smarter than that person, or I'm more athletic than this person. And this is where, if you think about like age like second, third grade, you try to start fitting in and you want to belong, and you're starting to kind of form your identity around what's acceptable to the world around you. So the whole job of the adolescent chair is to stay alive, safe, and acceptable by any means. And so this is where the seat of addiction can be born, believe it or not, because if emotions get in the way of us being alive, safe, and acceptable, we're going to do whatever we have to do to shut those emotions down. And so many times, addiction is one way to shut those emotions down. This is where we might also become codependent. Let me shut my needs down to appease the other person. It's where we might become the class clown. Maybe that's how I get my attention and that's how I belong. So there's so many facets of this adolescent chair. We live in story and assumption a lot. We don't really take in the truth of what's happening, and we almost formulate the world around who we think we need to be in order to get love and acceptance. And so this goes until about age 24, where we're living in this unconscious state of, who do I have to be? Past and the future. This is where a lot of anxiety and depression also comes online. And so if we had healthy models growing up, that taught us how to feel our feelings and set boundaries and communicate effectively, at 25, our prefrontal cortex is fully developed pretty much between 25 and 30. So we would slide very seamlessly into our adult chair. And in our adult chair is where we live with consciousness, with presence. We can stay grounded when we're triggered. We can like look at the fact and truth of a situation instead of the stories and assumptions of the adolescent chair. But many of us didn't have those models growing up. And it's not for any slight on our parents. I'm not sitting here trying to judge, blame anybody, because I always believe that people do the best they can with the tools they had. And if you don't have the tools, then how can you actually use them? And so that's where coming in as an adult care certified coach or a therapist or whatever, professional you go to is to help you to live in that healthy adult version of you through teaching tools around understanding the parts of who you are, where your defense mechanisms come from. Why am I shutting my emotions down? Maybe it wasn't acceptable when I was a child. And so it's learning how to reparent those parts, let those adolescent defenses know you don't have to run the show anymore. Like, I'm a healthy adult. This is what I'm learning. And sometimes when I work with clients, we'll do like a visualization of meeting these parts. And sometimes we'll say, well, can I come into this visualization? I would love to meet your adolescent and let her know or let him know I'm here to help the adult version of you become the healthy adult you so that you don't have to take over this anymore. You don't have to be so anxious. You don't have to be codependent. Like, adult you is going to take over from here. And so part of this model is really just learning how to be the most conscious and healthy and present version of yourself without letting the emotions of the inner child or the defenses of the adolescent be center stage on your life, if we kind of go back to that metaphor.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm of course over here thinking of my
Your children?
all my well, yeah, my children and like, oh gosh, how old they are and what skills will they have and where where did I not maybe have the tool or the resource to be the best parent in that moment. But
Mm.
I think I'm getting ahead of myself and worrying for
Well, and, it's never too late.
yeah. It's
If you
true.
think about it, that's the beautiful part of neuroplasticity and rewiring the brain. And so, I mean, I've got clients everywhere from, 13 to, 68 and everywhere in between. I mean, I've had clients in their 70s before that are doing this work. And so it's never too late to rewire and to start to reparent yourself. And it actually has a ripple effect in changing how you are in your relationships, whether that be a parent child, romantic relationships. I've done coaching with couples using this work to help each other understand their own defense mechanisms and, learn
Mhm.
how to fight fair from your adolescent,
Mhm.
from your adult share
Yeah.
and, recognize when, oh, this is your inner adolescent coming out, or, oh, does your inner child need
Mhm.
something? And so it's really a beautiful framework to almost create a touchstone
Mhm.
of like, what chair am I in? Am I
Mhm.
in my adult chair right now? Or, oh, my adolescent's running the show, or I feel really vulnerable and scared, and maybe my inner child needs some comforting. So it's just, I feel like it's just a relatable framework and it's very easy to digest and understand. I found it to be more so than, some of the internal family systems or assault, like some of the language that's used around that.
Mhm.
To me, this is just me personally. I found it to be a little bit more complicated. Like, okay, wait, is this a manager? Is this a buyer? Like,
Yeah.
I don't understand. And
Yeah.
so to me, it simplifies a lot of things and it makes it relatable for all ages. And
Yeah.
yeah, I call it the secret sauce. It's like kind of ties everything together for me personally and how I relate with my clients and
Yeah.
myself.
I think it's awesome. I remember doing a basic training on IFS and listening to it. And I had already, I knew something about the adult chair from you. And I remember thinking, gosh, the adult chair seems a lot more simpler to, n- to kind of put together, like piece together as a therapist. And then, but I also know that you use other modalities, like you said, in your session. So you
Hmm.
might be working from the adult chair model, but in the moment, you might be doing something really experiential that's
Hmm.
not you would, put in the box of IFS or adult chair. It would just be because I know you're very intuitive too. Like you come up with things in the moment, which I think is so cool.
Hmm.
I know you've
I
shared with
love
me
it.
a couple
I
things that you
know.
do. You make therapy seem so I don't know what the word is, fun or energizing. There's something about when you tell me what you're doing in session, I'm in awe. I'm like, wow, that is
Oh,
just yeah, and I wonder what's wrong with me. Like,
no.
but I think it's just differences. It's just, my type of client is different than maybe your type of client, like because I
Hmm.
work primarily with military. But I know that we can all use our creativity, we can use our intuition and our training in ways that align with who we are as therapists, as well as how we can help people heal. So I think it's just I don't know, maybe we don't talk enough about therapy being a creative profession, but it really is.
It
It's
really
it's
is.
pretty
I mean,
cool.
and I love like bringing the energy and bringing the
Yeah.
client in because I think so many therapists and I've fallen into this trap too, where it's like the clients look to me for answers when
Mm,
really it's not our job to give clients answers. It's up to us to help reflect the answers back to them that they already have within them.
yeah.
And so sometimes that involves the experiential work of like, tune into your body right now. Like I was teaching a client earlier about how to determine your internal yeses and nos.
Mm.
Like, what does your body feel like when you say yes versus when you say no? Like I would say, I said something like, you know, is your name, Jane? And I just had her close her eyes and it was like, her name's not Jane. And so, I was like, okay, what does your body feel like? And I said, just take note. And then I said, and is your name, so and so? And I said her real name.
Yeah.
And I was like, what changed?
Yeah.
And so it was this like, does your heart open or close? That's another thing that I think about. Or does my body like tighten or does it relax?
Mm.
And so then when it's like you're making a bigger decision, like, okay, well, should I quit my job or should I, do X, Y, and Z? It's using that same framework, but you practice with things that you already know.
Yeah.
Is my name Jenny or is my name Lisa? It's like, or, do I have a dog or do I have a cat? And it's like learning how to listen to the cues of your body with the simple things. And that way, when you're making quote unquote bigger decisions, you already have, again, that touchstone of your body. Like, okay, this is what my body feels like when it's a yes. And this is what my body feels like when it's a no.
Right.
And that's another way, like a tool that I help teach clients is learning how to tune into your own intuition. So that way you don't have to always rely on the outside and you can start to learn to trust that inner wisdom. Cause I think that's what we're all thirsty for. We're thirsty for answers when a lot of times the answers are
Yeah.
right inside of us. We
Yeah.
just need to be
Yeah.
taught the tools on how to
Mhm.
access them. And that's a
Exactly.
practice that I still fine tune all the time. I'm always learning and, I just did a 3-hour intuitive course on Sunday, so it's like I'm always like learning new things and then incorporating them in my own life. And then as I start to, again, it's taking those little nudges. It's like, oh, this is something cool. I'm really interested in this. And so I'm just going to take the leap and take this course and then I'll see where that takes me. And then and then of course it's the ripple effect because then a client learns a tool and then they incorporate it into their own life. And then maybe they, change their life and that which changes their family's life, which change, so you never know the impact that it's going to have. But it's also just, I think we're all just thirsty to live more aligned lives and to not feel so stuck and confused. And
Oh, yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you so much. I love what you share. You always give me so much to think about and
Oh, thanks,
validate
Lisa.
so many of my own like internal questions that I have. And I was just, when you were talking about, is it a yes or a no? I was thinking about a recent conversation I had with somebody who offered me something that they wanted to partner with me. And I thought, wow, this is a really neat opportunity. But something inside of me was just like, no, just there was like
Mhm.
a reaction. And afterwards when it drained me thinking about getting involved in this project, and I realized that it doesn't at this point in what I'm doing, it just I know why I had that feeling, and so it was like, "That's a no." It's
Mhm.
gonna be a no because of just knowing what I know about energy and time and,
Yeah.
it just
And
it's
isn't it interesting how hindsight, it's like we might not understand the no or we might not understand the yes, but then we take the nudge and it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but here we go.
yeah,
And then like you look back, it's almost like again, I go back to like my quarter life crisis and starting my business, the whole thing that we've been talking about. And it's like, I didn't know where I was going to end up, but now I see why I had to go through the things that I did and why I like the benefits of trusting my yeses and trusting my nos. And even in the midst of the confusion or I don't know if this is the right answer, but I gotta just do it. And
yeah,
then you turn around and you realize like, that's why I trust. I'm so
mhm,
glad that I trusted myself because then I ended up with this, or I didn't end up with something that I wasn't aligned with me.
yeah,
Or if I had done that, I may have pigeonholed myself into a different situation.
yeah,
So I don't know. And I feel like that's just kind of like life is a school. Like we're always learning and it's, sometimes we mess up and trip over things in our path and then we learn from it and then we hopefully don't trip over it again. But if we do, then we learn something new the next time.
yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's very interesting. I don't know. I feel like life is just fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It totally is. Sometimes so
And
ridiculous.
what you said before about, therapy and is all a creative process. And I think because we're all creative beings and we're all unique. And so it's not, like I said, it's not a manualized thing like, oh, let me go for my worksheet on anxiety because your anxiety is going to look different than mine. And so it can't be a one size fits all. It
Right.
has to be, relational. It has to be individualized. And I think that that's one of the cool parts of, my job as a therapist and coach and just being a relational being on the planet right now. It's like we all have a unique story and unique things to contribute. And, so getting open and curious and validating and, letting everyone live as the fullest expression of who they are. Because that's, I think, how, to get a little woo-woo, it's like we raise the vibration of, the energy on the planet. And that just, I don't know, to me, it's what we're here to do, is to live the fullest expression of who we are.
Yeah.
And learn everything that we can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's incredible and so true. I agree with you. I'm on the same vibration, I hope, as you are.
Well, that's why we aligned.
Yeah, that's why we enjoy our time
souls
together.
have aligned in this lifetime for
absolutely. Well,
a very important reason.
If people want to learn more about you, where should they head to?
My website is trueconsciousliving.com. Okay. And I'm also active on Instagram. I have a TikTok and Facebook at True Conscious Living. And I post, once a week I do like a little talking video about random topics. And then I just post random stuff. But I have a blog on my website and all my other podcast episodes that I've been on, including, yours.
Yeah.
And just my website is probably the best way to learn more about me, or you can email me and I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all those links in the show notes so you guys can reach out to Jenny, follow her, and I'll even put the other episode that you were on in the links too, if you guys want to hear part 1 with Jenny. Oh, so it's been a couple years, I think, hasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. So it's been.
I think because we had met at a random coffee meetup, and
that's right.
So when you were talking before about your podcast, you're like, I don't know why I'm doing this, and it's like that's how you and I connected. Was we went to that random coffee, and you're like, you should be on my podcast, and now here we are, how many years later, and
I know you're right. That was thank you, Eric Beasley. Give a shout out to Eric for putting that together. I don't even know if he's. We need to get together and have another coffee meetup. Those are always fun. But
I know.
Thank you so much for coming on again. And I'm sure this
Lisa.
won't be the last. I'm sure I'll have you back hopefully sooner than last time, because that seems like forever ago. And I still think you should have your own podcast. I'm just going to put it out there.
I know. You've been saying that to me for years.
Yeah.
So maybe one day it'll be more soul aligned.
Yeah, maybe.
But right now my body is saying a no. Right now my body says no.
Okay, I'll stop.
Maybe in the future.
Gotcha. Okay, Jenny. Well, thank you so much for being here.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Love it.
Please note that the therapy show with Lisa Mustard is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and not a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your therapist, doctor, or physician before implementing any suggestions from the show. The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard is edited and engineered by Chelsea Weaver. If you're looking to start a podcast or ready to take the editing off of your plate, be sure to visit chelseaweaverpodcasting.com. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine. Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover all the pod courses and other continuing education offerings. And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.